Title: I betrayed him, and he became a monster towards me. I was unfaithful to my husband, and he found out almost immediately. I can't believe how foolish I was. We were blissfully married, and I was completely content. He made it clear that I needed to find a new place to stay because our home was no longer mine, and that he was now single. He took everything, transferred the funds. Hi everybody! I'm leading a goal of 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I truly believe we can achieve it together. So if you could hit that subscribe button, it would really mean a lot to me. Now, let's dive into the story. I'm a 32-year-old woman, married to my 33-year-old husband for 7 years. My parents blame him for treating me poorly, but I know I have to face the consequences of my actions. I can't bring myself to tell them the truth. She begins by saying it's a story fit for a novel, but all she wants is for her parents to leave her husband alone and be ready to become wonderful grandparents, who will be cordial with their grandchildren's father. 3 years ago, I was unfaithful, and my husband discovered it almost immediately. I couldn't have been more foolish. We had a very happy marriage, and I felt completely satisfied and open to discussing anything we wanted. But all it took was a moment of reckless excitement, and I ruined everything. We often hear stories about how this typically goes, and I've read plenty, but our situation doesn't fit the usual narrative. It was obvious how deep my husband's pain was, but instead of lashing out, he expressed it through his actions, which were completely out of character. He took everything, transferred the money, made our home unlivable, and vanished to a place where no one could force him to do anything. He let me know I needed to find another place to stay because our home was no longer mine, and he was now single, but he didn't make anything official except informing me. Thankfully, my parents are unaware of that initial part. While some might be horrified by his actions, that wasn't my main concern. My bigger worry was that I hadn't seen him for days, which turned into months, and I was anxious about what would happen to our marriage and whether we would have children. Beneath everything he did, I could sense his silent suffering. I threw up countless times from the stress. Soon enough, I had no idea what to do, but I had to face the reality that money was tight, and I needed help to survive. When I had nothing left, I reached out to him for assistance, just to cover the basics. His response was that he had no reason to help me with my life if I couldn't help him with his, but he would if I did. He suggested ways I could assist him, which involved traveling to where he lived. At that point, it was more about seeing him again and getting the help I needed. Once there, I followed his suggestions, but I didn't leave. I stayed even though there wasn't much for me to do. He was living the life he had chosen, and he didn't mind if I stayed around. That meant living very isolated from everyone for a long time, and I wasn't very happy there, but it was better than returning home to misery. Over time, we began rebuilding parts of our relationship, and by that, I mean rekindling our mutual fondness and intimacy. He wasn't ready for reconciliation, but he was gentle and affectionate towards me. He went from not caring why I stayed to not wanting to be vulnerable again, but otherwise wishing me well. That's when we started receiving guests at this remote place, whom he helped by hiring guides and covering their expenses. My parents, other relatives, and some friends came by. I could never explain to my parents how we ended up living in such an isolated place, let alone what I had done and that our marriage was supposed to be over. To them, it seemed like he had forced me to move somewhere far away, where it was difficult to see people and where I couldn't possibly be happy with no other factors involved. I could have easily left, but I would have had to give up the intimacy I had regained, and I would rather have died than lose that. The remorse still gnawed at me, but it was easier to manage when he was living the life he wanted and holding me when I needed comfort. 3 years after everything started, he told me that if I wanted reconciliation, we could make it happen. We could return home, seek counseling, and restore our marriage. He never wanted to make my life miserable, only to make his own bearable. So, we've been back for a few months, new house, new neighborhood, new job. It feels like we're a young married couple again. As for my parents, we see them often now, but while I'm more than ready to embrace this new life and leave the past behind, they still hold resentment towards my husband for the way we lived for those 3 years. They don't know I cheated, they don't know that I was willing to do anything to stay by his side and atone for my actions. They don't know what it took for us to reconcile after everything we've been through, but they paint him in a negative light. All I want is to build a future with him and prepare to have children, but they can't seem to let go. It's becoming hard to bear. They give him a hard time as if reconciliation were a crime every time we see them, and now I dread visiting them. I'm afraid they'll say something that will cause him to leave again. On the other hand, I'm terrified of telling my parents the full truth. They'll see me as a woman who cheats and think that's what I should always do without facing any consequences. Not only would they lose respect for me, but they'd also have more reason to criticize how my husband handled things. I think I need a break from my parents, a long break. Will I get what I want like I thought I would when I ruined everything? I don't know what to do with them. Normally, I don't keep secrets, but I no longer trust them with mine, especially not this one. Are you serious? She added an update here, let's check it out. Update: I want to emphasize that I'm very grateful to those who aren't blaming my husband for his initial reaction and how he chose to cope over the years. However, my parents won't see it that way. What he did was technically illegal, and they'd also think he made it too hard for me to reconcile. I don't agree with that perspective. I don't care that what he did isn't the most socially acceptable behavior, he's always been a model citizen, and this just shows how much pain he was in. He also had no obligation to reconcile. If I didn't want to live the way I did, I could have chosen not to. No one forced me, and certainly not him, but my parents would interpret it differently. They'd still blame him, and this time they'd justify it by saying cheating is justifiable. I don't want to hear them say that or have them near my new life. To summarize everything, I was unfaithful to my husband, and he left to an isolated part of the world. He didn't mind me joining him, and over time, we started to rebuild our relationship. My parents don't know the full story, they only know that we lived in an isolated place for years, and that I didn't seem as happy as I once was. Now, my husband and I are reconciling and have a future back home, but my parents still don't know the truth and blame him for everything. I just want to work on my marriage without interference, but my parents are making it difficult, and I'm scared to tell them what really happened. Wow, let me share my thoughts. What I see here is pure selfishness, everything is about you. You cheated because you were self-centered and wanted a quick thrill. Your husband leaves you, takes everything he worked for, and disappears to some isolated place. Your parents are upset with him and you're too selfish to even tell them the truth. You're spinning it in your head like, oh, but if I tell them, they'll still say he shouldn't have reacted that way. No, you're just trying to avoid admitting what you did. Tell them the truth. Stop being selfish. This is why he left, because his wife betrayed him. You hurt him, but you're too selfish to admit it, so you went and suffered, and now your parents are painting him as a villain. They see him as controlling, but he didn't ask you to join him there. You wanted to go because after he left, you had no money. You betrayed someone who took care of you, and the only reason you regretted it was because you knew you were losing your comfortable life. You had nothing left, so you suffered for 3 years because you needed him. Now you want to reconcile, but the chances of you doing it again are high. You'll do it again if you think you can get away with it because you're selfish. Clearly, you're a very selfish person, and you're hurting him again by not telling your parents the truth. You'll never miss an opportunity to hurt him because you really don't care about him, you just care about what he provides for you. That's very unfortunate, and yes, you're definitely a selfish person. You convinced him to take you back, and now you're talking about having kids. He was doing fine without you, he doesn't need you. You're a user, and you only care about yourself. You need to be on your own, figure out how to make money without him. Let's check out these comments. Someone says, so let me get this straight. Your problem is that your parents don't understand why your life and marriage are so messed up. Tell them the truth, simple as that. If you really want to move past this, you have to be honest. Don't make this worse for your husband by letting people think he abandoned you without explaining why. The least you can do for him is tell others the truth. Absolutely. Someone else said, so you want to punish your husband more by making him take the blame for your actions? No, I don't think you really do. However, there's a middle ground between telling your parents everything and hiding it all. You need to go to your parents alone and explain that you know they're resentful towards your husband for the time apart. Tell them it was your fault, you betrayed him and drove him away. The time apart was necessary, but it's personal and you don't want to go into details. However, you'd appreciate their support and ask them not to be resentful, and if they are, it should be directed towards you. Absolutely. Someone said, if I cheated and my girlfriend stayed with me, and my parents didn't like her because of how she reacted to my mistake, I'd man up and tell them the truth. You made this relationship between your husband and your parents impossible. You should at least try to fix it before doing the cowardly thing and running away. Another person said, you've said you're fully committed to your husband, but you're not. You don't have his back. You're prioritizing your parents' opinion of you over their opinion of him, which is based on a lie. You're throwing him under the bus to maintain your comfortable life. Either you're in the marriage or you're not, make up your mind. Someone else added, you're insanely selfish. Not only did you cheat, but now you want to act like he's the bad guy for making you work to fix what you broke. But you're letting your parents blame him instead of telling them the truth. Your husband deserves someone who actually cares about him. Someone asked, how is leaving to an isolated place because you cheated and broke his heart illegal? Did he leave you to harvest cocaine in Colombia? Leaving your wife because she cheated isn't illegal. Someone else replied, stealing all the money, making the home uninhabitable, and refusing to give it back unless she moved to the wilderness to live and work for him, that's where it gets legally questionable. He turned into an abusive nutcase for 3 years and possibly more. She responded, it was technically illegal because he took all our assets and some of my belongings that you can't just take from someone else. He made the house a huge safety hazard. I save our assets because we were married, so by law, everything is supposedly ours. He didn't follow that rule and did things to get away with it under certain conditions, which is also technically illegal. But I don't care, I'm supposed to be the victim here, and I don't see it that way. Another comment reads, you cheated on your husband, and now he's being unfairly treated by your parents. Own up to what you did and give your husband the respect he deserves. Absoluto. That sums it up. She's extremely selfish, but what do you think? And that's the end of this video, everyone. If you have an opinion you want to share, please leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this content. Turn on notifications to update my latest posts. See you next time.